Welcome to DBSync's Partner Series, where we share the invaluable insight our partners bring when successfully implementing products and services for their clients. In the segment today, we'll be discussing challenges and lessons learned when adopting Microsoft Dynamics CRM. Now, as we all know, Microsoft, like most technologies, is complex and getting more and more complex every day with more offerings and capabilities. So certainly you can imagine that as an integration company, we're challenged daily with all the different use cases that come up, often sometimes feeling like we're almost unable to keep up with what's really going on. This is why we're very excited and grateful that we have the opportunity to tap into our partners' experience to see what is really happening out there. What are they actually dealing with? Not really just in the integration space, because obviously as DBSync, that is what we do, but where are they seeing with new customers who are adopting Microsoft Dynamics? What are some of the issues that they're confronting, whether it's identifying new products and services, implementing ongoing maintenance, basically the run-of-the-mill types of situations one might face in doing this type of work. Today, I'm looking forward to exploring all of this in more detail with my guest, Jason Tromans of Tecman. Now, as a DBSync partner since about 2020, Jason, I'm assuming that you've seen a few things from many of the customers that you deal with. Certainly, I would imagine many are routine, but you've probably got some unique situations as well. So it'll be interesting to sort of delve into that in a minute. But before we do so, let me first welcome you officially and ask you to tell us in a little bit more detail who you are, what Tecman does, and if you can, either what you think you're most famous for or most proud of in the work that you do.
Thank you. Good to be here. So my name is Jason Tromans. I lead the Dynamics 365 customer engagement CRM apps at Tecman and a lot of the Power Platform technologies. We deal with a lot of customers, predominantly UK based, but we do stretch internationally. We've got customers that have global systems of CRM as well. In terms of a lot of the customers that we deal with, that they are manufacturers or distributors, and within that could be food and beverage that's selling online. It could be consumer goods that we might buy toys for our children off Amazon, etc. And they sell to those guys and have a relationship with Amazon or other retailers. So I think from our point of view, we have quite a varied customer base. We deal with other customers as well. But I think from our point of view, CRM, especially the remote world that we are more in today than we ever have been since the pandemic, that's put a new pressure on CRM itself.
Sure.
I think from our point of view as well, in terms of some of the challenges that customers have with CRM, and our industry and our customers have with CRM at Tecman, we have, it's always that blank sheet of paper. I need a CRM system. I need to have better visibility. I need to control my pipeline, but nobody really knows what that actually means in reality. And what you need to get through is the people that use it, the sales, internal, external sales, the customer services team. They need to ensure that from our perspective, it's not a chore to use. And from our challenges as Tecman, as a Dynamics 365 partner, and of course a DBSync partner, is to ensure that integration, that knowledge, that education is value adding for the users, so they want to use the tool to help them give a better customer experience. That customer journey, the term customer journey, has never really been used so frequently than it has been probably in the past 12 months, where people have got to really understand that they need to look after their customers or they're going to lose them.
Aha. So probably, yeah, one thing you really reinforce, that not only are customers looking for, but you reinforce, is that concept of customer journey. Certainly, we know that well. So, okay, we get a sense you're dealing folks more kind of in the manufacturing field, if you will. So those are sort of the customers you'll deal with. Do you think, maybe you sort of touched on it perhaps with the idea of sort of the blank sheet of paper, but what are maybe some of the most common use cases you find? Like, what would you say? I mean, there's just like, I need a CRM, but are there anything specific that you see over and over?
Yeah, I think from our point of view, if we take some of the industries specifically, is that a lot in manufacturing distribution is that you kind of understand your target market. There is no blank sheet of paper where you can go sell to everybody. You know that you are going to go and sell to a wholesaler, or you're going to go and sell to somebody that's going to go and resell on your product, or use your product to make a finished product. So a component for a car, or a component for a toy, or a component that ends up in one of our homes, for example, that actually you'd never know that sitting in a home today that came from that company. I bought it off somebody else. So the reality is they know their target market. They know that they've got their prospects. They know that they've got their customers. But the reality is that they're not there doing mass marketing saying who would like to come and work with us, who would like to become a customer of ours. And it's an open book. It's a case of very targeted, and the industries that you deal with within manufacturing distribution are quite kind of verticalized. So food, beverage, consumer goods, building materials, automotive, etc. They've got a lot of commonality between them, but it's a case of a lot of it, you need to understand that industry. You need to understand the pure needs. It's not different to really a CRM for any other industry, but you very much have to understand the needs of that industry and tailor your CRM and your data capture and how it serves you in terms of the data to help you sell better or help you serve better. As a direct example is in the building product sector, in the building materials sector here in the UK, and it's probably similar across the globe in certain scenarios as well, is that we have an example where a house builder or someone that goes and actually you buy a property from, they will sell you that property, no problem at all. But the reality is that they've involved lots of companies to deliver the property that is that you're buying. The bricks are bought from somebody, the lighting is bought from somebody, the drainage is bought from somebody, the windows are bought from somebody, the doors are bought from somebody. The reality is that those people get somebody to do the hard work, so a contractor to do that hard work. And then that contractor is having to go out and talk to lots of companies for them to quote for that door. Now, you might get 10 companies quoting for one door on all of the properties, for example, that person's building or that company are building. But the idea here, and trying to keep it as simple as possible for this series, is that contractor, that business might ask for 10 quotes for that door. You're only ever going to buy that door once. So the reality as well is that if you're speaking with companies that are trying to serve the same property or the same development or the same overall project is the best way of putting it, you don't want to overstate your pipeline. You don't want to say, oh, I can win this door 10 times over and look how big my value of my pipeline is. You can't do that. You clearly, you're only ever going to win that door or those doors once. So again, it's a structure. You have an opportunity, but you have a project, and it's the concept. So you can have many opportunities to one project, but you may only win it once. Again, there's other scenarios there that it's not just building materials, the products and the making of houses that applies to, but it's one challenge that we deal with. And unless somebody really understands the manufacturing distribution sector, then you're not really going to architect and build a CRM solution that's going to really be beneficial. That's the challenge, is that anybody can have an opportunity, anybody can have a lead, anybody can store some details in a CRM system. But unless you really understand the industry, then you're never going to be able to build it that's going to add value. And that's where we think we're different.
Yeah. Well, that makes perfect sense. And I think to be, for many of us, we understand it, conceptually, obviously, but not nearly obviously to the detail you're talking about. And I think that became really obvious to a lot of us with the pandemic, when we started talking about supply chains and understanding that if one piece breaks down, it really has an impact all the way across. Like you feel, the ruptures, if you will, and it just, I think, it's so easy just to kind of assume one thing gets here and that's that. But as you're telling us, you really have to understand all those pieces. And in some ways, you're right. It's like, they say you only get one chance to make a first impression. In many ways, it's kind of has a similar, process.
Absolutely. And one example is at this moment in time that we still suffer with is in the automotive market. One in general is the lack of semiconductors globally. That stops production happening for multiple products, not just in automotive. But the idea is if you don't use it to keep your customers updated and use a CRM tool to automate those updates, to keep that communication flowing, a moment something comes available to somebody else, they're going to steal your customer. So, and that's the cutthroat world that we're in. So right. Very much CRM very much has to be there, not just to help you sell it in the first place, but also make sure that you manage your customer in a way that is going to make them sticky to you long term, because trust, confidence are big things. But at the same time, if you leave a door open and you don't use CRM to help automate your communication, unfortunately, you're going to expose yourself.
Yeah, I mean, that makes perfect sense. And you're sort of kind of hinting at kind of where I wanted to go next a little bit is, I imagine that we probably see some similarities or commonalities in the approach of when, a customer is first adopting Microsoft Dynamics 365, what are they experiencing versus when they're 6 months in, maybe a little more comfortable in the process. And then maybe a year later, or, when they're, becoming so-called experts, are they looking for different things? I imagine you might find new challenges there. So let's break that down a little bit. Maybe first, tell us like sort of your typical new adoptee. What are the challenges you're facing when folks are thinking, okay, it's time to really get involved in this CRM business I've been hearing about to make things work a little bit more smoothly? What do you see happening at that sort of first tier level?
There's two levels. There's the business process element. There's some customers, some businesses know what their business process is, and they just don't have it systemized. So then it's a case of making it add value in terms of inside of a CRM system to manage that customer journey, and then make sure it is automated to then cut down on the manual work. But the challenge some adopters of CRM have is that they don't really have a defined business process. So then it's a case that people like ourselves at Tecman have to be business process consultants, not just software consultants. So the idea is trying to marry those two together to make it fit and the customer understand the value of what they're about to use and how it will help them. Some companies, some customers will have that challenge to visualize that.
Sure.
The second part of the challenge of adoption for new customers is data and the volume of data. Some customers will say, we'll start with the bare minimum and build it upwards over time. Some will say, I want all this from day one. Now, the challenge is that you could, again, even manufacturers and distributors, they're creating e-commerce sites because it's more efficient for their customers to go and place orders. But even they're creating B2C. So end consumers have an option of they've got an arm to that as well. But they wanted to take that detail in. And they're going, oh, I want all that history transferred from Shopify or WooCommerce, etc. And I want that all inside of CRM with the help of DBSync as an example. And I want all that in from day one. But then the reality is that the early adoption is no one really knows, or the customer struggles to understand exactly what that value of data will bring, or if they actually need that data in the first place. So business process challenges and data, quantity and quality challenges are two massive ones.
Yeah, and so I imagine then once people start by about 6 months in, they're probably starting to understand a little bit more about, this is what this data is telling us. Because certainly we know from our experience that, after people are about 6 months in, they start recognizing, wow, this tool can really do some things, and maybe we need to explore that a little bit more. So where would you say on the journey things change or go a little bit, how do they develop 6 months in?
I think the reality is after 6 months in, people really start to understand the value of data. Unfortunately, some will understand that they've tried to bring data in that's not valuable, and then there's a
Sure.
there's a strategic discussion of what is now valuable, and you learn and you evolve from there onwards. So I think trying to understand the data, you've then got data in to say, well, actually, what is it telling me? You can then start to think about from a reporting and an insight point of view with CRM, what trends you're getting, what insight you're getting, who's adopting the system well, and unfortunately, what users aren't adopting the system. And then you can start to do something with it, opposed to after month one or making the judgment call before going, oh, so-and-so won't use the system because they just don't like it. They just will do it the old school way. We all might get surprised of who takes the system on more than others, and every user is different. But the idea is with data, with the use, with the, okay, well, this is give me this visibility for this set of functionality. Around pipeline, my stages of my business process flow in CRM. First of all, I do an inquiry. Second of all, I gather some more details on the tender. Third, I start to put a proposal or a quote together. And then four, I get a yes or no. Hold on a second, there might be a step in between that we keep missing. Okay, let's evolve our business process. Let's put another step in. Because at the end of the day, we want to track that better, because that becomes a bottleneck in our operation. So how do we identify it better? How do we get more people involved in it? How do we automate the process better? So again, showing that visibility, but then creating and getting CRM does what CRM does best, and creating some lovely, cool, automated kind of functionality.
Yeah, and then I think you're right in the sense of you kind of don't really know what data you have until you start digging in, and then you really, now we talk about, everything is metrics, analytic, data, but it's so true that, sometimes more data isn't necessarily better data. So really kind of understanding that, how to work with that, and then so what are some of the possibilities or opportunities that opens up for you? Now, I imagine then as my grandfather used to say, you're cooking with gas by about a year in, where folks are really understanding the data and starting to think, maybe we can do some, things, add on some things or do some things outside of this. So maybe tell us if you have any particular use cases there, or if you have a particular, customer, maybe that shall not be named, but really had kind of an interesting experience with that you really learned from, or that sort of set a new standard for you, perhaps.
Use cases is an interesting one, because I'm going to go slightly out of piece with our manufacturing distribution space, and say that we do take on other projects, and this one is a charity, a not-for-profit in the UK, who specialise or focus around driving assistance for people that unfortunately are a little bit less fortunate, i.e. they cannot afford to pay their electricity, their gas. They might have trouble in insulating their house, or they might have trouble in paying for a replacement boiler or that kind of thing. So we took on a project working with a couple of charities, and they run projects where they get funding from different sources, including government. And the idea is that they have to spend that money helping people try and get out of fuel poverty. And the reality is that these charities were using disparate systems. They never had a central view of their applicants process, the people that would say, I need some help. They never were able to link data together very well and understand reporting and how efficient a home is or isn't, or how badly a house needs some help, some TLC to it. And the idea is that we've used Dynamics 365 as a platform, into CRM as a platform, and we've created that single kind of contact record and that application record, and they put it live with a couple of projects, some funding projects. Now it has multiple projects live, and now it's about to be used by over 50 local authorities in the UK, in the Midlands area, for another project that's now using the Power Platform and the Power Portal to allow lots more people to manage application processes and hopefully extend the reach of help for people who need it the most. So that's using Dynamics as a platform that has got the core foundation of what it is, accounts and contacts. That's what CRM is, its heart. But at the same time, taking that on and helped people deliver projects and solutions that ultimately are helping them, some of the most vulnerable people in society.
Yeah, what an important story. And I think certainly, many of our customers can relate to that as well. We have quite a few nonprofits who have similar challenges in that, like it's not necessarily a lack of data, but it's either data all over the place, meaning in multiple different systems, or in many cases, sometimes, as we say, old school, where we're still, capturing things, by hand or in notebooks, whatever it might be. And, the challenge of affordability, even just for the systems themselves, let alone for the clients that they help support. So I think that's, one of the most telling examples of sort of the beauty of what, great technology can do, especially when it can sort of, find that way to bring a bunch of different things together when you have, less resources to work from. Now let's move to a maybe slightly different direction in the sense that we know that there are, hundreds of SaaS apps out there, many, many, many. And I'm curious to hear what other ones you use. And by that, I mean just, what else are you implementing or adopting for your clients? And do you have any, and when I say horror stories, I just mean, obviously, we've heard some great successes and that's all what we strive for, but we also know that some of the greatest lessons learned are from so-called failures or successes waiting to happen. So maybe you have some examples of some other work that you're doing and maybe what you've learned from that as well. That'd be really helpful, I think, for people to hear.
I think one of the challenges is that in terms of tools available, firstly, there's the Dynamics tool itself that consistently evolves. We say every 6 months, every April, every October, or spring and fall. But from our point of view, obviously that new technology gets put out there. We try and be pioneers of that technology, and unfortunately, sometimes it's still a little bit rough around the edges, and we have to learn the hard way using Microsoft technology. The apps, in terms of Microsoft App Source now, is getting bigger by the day. A lot more people going into it. There's some solid apps in there that do some good things. One noticeable thing that we use internally, as well as we deliver to customers, is electronic signatures, digital signatures. Obviously, one being DocuSign, and obviously there's many more offerings out there globally that can help get digital signatures on your documents. But from a contract point of view, or a customer needed to sign on the dotted line from what they're about to pay for, whether it's something that's consumer related, that I have to sign on the dotted line that I'm about to buy something, but then it's stored centrally in that business's CRM system, or it's a contract for a renewal of a supply of services or products for the forthcoming 12 months, but you've got someone signed on the dotted line and it forces it. And then the document just turns inside of CRM. That's great. But then we also get the challenges that with AppSource, we get our customers that say, oh, we've put this into the system, we've had a go, and it doesn't work very well. Can you help us with it? And it could be a tool that we don't know. It's becoming far harder and more rigid to get into AppSource these days. But from our point of view, is that our challenge is that because Microsoft is now such an open platform, and this whole citizen developer principle and the AppSource makes it harder for companies like us to help support and evolve customers when they're also doing so much themselves. I think some of the challenges that we get is that writing Power Automate flows to do lots of automation in the technology that hooks up with different tools or helps up with different Microsoft applications. Trying to unpick those if there's a problem, causes headache. And at this moment in time, there's some new functionality coming in October 2021 in fall around adding comments to flows, which is fantastic.
Right.
But historically, how many people and how many consultants or developers have sat there and commented on the work that they've done in reality? And it's probably not many. And that has to be a changing culture for people like Tecman, but it's still going to present a problem to try and unpick what other people have done. Or even if a consultant develops something really cool, but then 6 months later it breaks and nobody really understands why. Because the technology is there to create cool stuff doesn't mean that you should go gung-ho. And that is a massive challenge for us, because supportability in today's world, in today's platform, with app stores, etc., is hard.
Yeah, no, you've certainly said a mouthful there. I think that's so true. It's like, just because you can, it doesn't mean you should. And you're right. It's like, it's easy to get starry-eyed with all the, potential. You're like, wow, I can do this and this and this, and now there's this. And you're right. But down the line, there's also not just implementing it, but also understanding it when you have to solution later, or problem solve a breakdown or whatever, and all the complexities that adds. So I think
Yes.
You're right. I think that's a really, that's sort of a key point to think about. And you want to be the person there who's like, yes, we can do this, this, and this, but you really have to know your stuff and really think critically about, well, yes, this is good, but then let's think about this later on. Because I think that's, the more we add, think of cars, the more we add electronic solutions, there's of course more things that that could go wrong and you have to look into. So it really, really, gets quite complex. Now, let me ask you this, and I'm not sure if you had experience, but you can certainly tell us if you have. We've just kind of been expanding our product portfolio from cloud workflow to replication and now to Google Archive. And I'm curious if any of those have come up with your clients as far as things that, they've been looking to sort of deal with, or is that really not in their wheelhouse? And if so, what have you learned from that? Because we know just trying to do that for our customers and suggest expansions and good ideas when they tell us about some of the things that they need, that we've had a bit of a learning curve ourselves. So I was just curious if that's something that you've delved into, and what has it taught you?
I think in terms of at this moment in time, we've not specifically had anything regarding those three: replication, cloud workflow, or Google Archive. Obviously, Google Archive is an interesting conversation because we are very much a Microsoft house with Dynamics, etc., and we promote Office 365. But we still get the odd challenges when Google is still used, but that does prohibit some features within Dynamics as a CRM platform, which clearly we want customers to make the most of their experience with it. I think one area is from a cloud workflow point of view, nothing that we've used as yet, but something that is very much potentially on the agenda to help offer some templated assistance, I think is the best way of putting it. And we're always on the lookout from our point of view to choose tools that are off the shelf, or they've been there, done it, got the t-shirt, opposed to software houses or software companies trying to create it themselves for the first time. We'd rather say, who else has done it? Have they done it well? Does it work? Can we use it? And some of the templates that's coming with cloud workflow, there's something that we're probably going to look to use moving forward.
Yeah, that definitely makes sense. I feel like, that's one thing that we do well is, we like, hey, we've got these templates, we've got, sort of this, we like to call it plug and play, but, the benefits of having things that we know already work well and that you can easily sort of adopt, really, of course, is, the obvious goal. but like you said, there's a lot to learn from, a lot to know, and we can certainly learn a lot from how others have, tried and succeeded, or perhaps tried and not quite succeeded.
Yeah.
What can we learn from that as well? So I thank you for sharing so much information, giving us some really good examples. I feel like the beginnings of a guidebook and how to best adopt or implement Microsoft Dynamics 365. But before we completely wrap up, is there any, just out of curiosity, any, case, for lack of a better word, that you're working on now that, is that you're either really excited about, or that is one that is really, got the hair standing up, on the back of your neck, as far as both excitement but terror?
I think one example is that we've been working on is with a beverage company, a global beverage company that is using Dynamics to manage their sales engagement process, as well as their customer service process. But they sell business to business, they sell business to consumer as well. And the business to consumer, they have Shopify sites, and we're using DBSync to take orders from multiple Shopify sites into CRM. That is going to allow them to segment their customers, to help market to their customers, to help upsell to their customers, as well as the mainstream business to business accounts that they're selling into large supermarkets, wholesalers, etc., to help them promote their brands, and they're launching new websites and new brands and new offerings constantly. So they're very much a business that is on the up, and CRM, I think, is going to play rather a large part in their overall evolution of their offering as a business, and having that connected approach from how they're selling to create that customer insight, and then the journey, and then the follow-up, and then the repeat sale, etc., and using CRM as the hub from that, and doing that globally. That's one I hope in 12 months I'll be looking at and going, wow, they're using CRM in a pretty cool way.
Yeah.
Or at least fingers crossed.
Yeah. Yes. Well, it feels good, certainly. And definitely, I mean, it's definitely a fingers crossed, but I think you can feel fairly confident that we're probably going to see that. So Jason, I want to just thank you again. I really appreciate you taking some time out of your schedule and sharing your brain power with us, and reflecting on some of these experiences, and kind of both what you've been through and kind of what to look forward to. These insider views are really valuable. Again, it's easy to get stuck in your own bubble, but as well as our customers definitely want to hear how others are doing it well, besides just DBSync. So it's really important to share your point of view and this information with us. Now, one last thing though, if you could tell us, where can folks listening find out a little bit more about you and Tecman and the great work that you're doing?
So, personally, if people want to reach out to me and ask any questions, you'll be able to find me on LinkedIn. And please feel free to drop me an email with any questions or queries you may have. I'm happy to set up an informal chat. But then, from a business and a Tecman point of view, as a Dynamics 365 partner, if you'd like to have a chat with us as a business and understand more about what we can do and what we can deliver and what we do deliver, www.tecman.co.uk, and that's TECMAN.co.uk, and there is an email address at hello@tecman.co.uk as well, if you would like to use that email address to send a query in for someone to pick up and come back to you. So yeah, we're an open door. Happy to have a conversation.
I'm sure you're going to have some more definitely after this as well, because I think that's what people like the most is, and that's the beauty of today's world, is accessibility, being able to have those chats and really, find out a little bit more. Because a lot of times, as you said, particularly maybe with your industry as well, from what I understand, maybe not as typically tech savvy as some of the obviously the other tech companies, or those that use that all the time. So sometimes you kind of need to have the space to have these either informal chats, or certainly a place to kind of break in and ask questions, because people always say, I don't want to ask anything dumb, or I don't know where to start asking questions. Those are great places to start. And
Yeah.
I like to feel like we can do the same thing, certainly. So kind of following Jason's footsteps, we too provide lots of information on our website, www.mydbsync.com, as well as LinkedIn and Twitter. You can certainly follow us and kind of see what's going on, and find out more about other products that we have and, possible trials and things like that. So all the things that you would expect, please check out a little bit further, and we're sure to hopefully find solutions for you as well. So thanks for joining us, everyone, and please keep an eye out for our next Partner Insight video. We're really enjoying this, I'm sure, as much as you are. Again, hearing not only about the successes, but the challenges too. Those are really important for us to, all of us to understand sort of the, not the battle we're in, but certainly the work ahead. And so until we see you next, we'll try and keep your apps talking. Thanks so much. Bye-bye.